Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Blake here. Blake, you're somebody that's been in the marketing space. You have the experience of being an influencer yourself, and you kind of channel that into the marketing world and really learned how to create successful campaigns, how to manage those campaigns for the right kind of goals for people. And now you've worked with clients from Puma to the Los Angeles Chargers to the leading live streaming live shopping platform, whatnot, and just tons and tons of people. You've got your own amazing poker tournament that happens in Vegas that a lot of influencers come to. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you got it for sure.
Awesome. So just kind of like going back to the beginning, how did your interest in the world of business, of wanting to be an entrepreneur, and then eventually kind of like being around this creator space, how did that passion start?
Yeah, I mean, uh, being around the creator space was something that happened for me sort of by accident. I mean, my parents got divorced when I was a young kid. When they split, I kind of went from having a pretty crazy life to having a crazy life on the other end of the spectrum. I mean, literally, I grew up. I'm part of the Wynn family in Las Vegas, and my dad is Steve's younger brother. I grew up in a 15,000 square foot house. I mean, like the kind of way that people don't grow up. And when my parents split when they were 10, it was kind of that story of like, now you go to single mom gets left with nothing kind of story. So we then lived literally in a hotel room for over a year. And like, not like a suite, nothing like that. Like, it was literally like she had a friend that gave us a hotel room. And so side by side, she's in a queen bed, I'm in a queen bed for over a year. And she's figuring out how to get on her feet. And when your lifestyle changes that much and you're a young kid, your kind of natural reaction is you just ask your parent, like, well, what can I do to just have that back? And she's like, well, if we need money, so we got to figure out how to get that. I was like, so if I can get my own money, like I can just keep buying whatever I want and stuff. And she's like, I guess. And when I say whatever I want, it was like I liked collecting football cards. Um, I wanted the iPad. The iPad had come out. This is like 2010s. This is like right when the iPad was coming out. And I started by reselling sneakers. I started with like $40 that I don't know how I had the $40, I guess, but bought two pairs of shoes for $20 a piece, sold them on eBay for 110 overnight a pair. So then I had 220, and I just kept turning over shoes until, I mean, by the time when I was 12, I paid taxes for the first time. By the time I was 14, I was earning over 100,000 a year on top of paying employees and everything else. And so right around the time I was 16, I wanted to grow the business. So I started reaching out to all the people that were talking about sneakers on YouTube, and they all wanted these price points to advertise where I'm like, well, I'm not going to pay that. That's like, there's not even an amount of shoes I could sell to recoup that. Um, so I decided to start my own YouTube channel, and like my early videos, I like hold up a shoe and I'm like, this is size 12 Jordan 8, and it's $620, and my PayPal is Dale at dalewin.com, which was my mom's PayPal email at the time. I'm like trying to like literally do what I guess I could have done a lot better on Whatnot or whatever. Um, but then I did a video about 40 days in where I showed my whole collection, and I called it like 16-year-old shows $100,000 sneaker inventory or something like that. And it went viral-ish, got over 1 million views. I got like 10,000 subscribers from that. And I mean, yeah, 6 months later, I had 100,000, and it just kept going. And so the creator space, like I completely fell into like by accident. You could tell by my early videos that had no editing. They were like one take wonders and just uploaded to YouTube. So I'd like walk out of the frame, come back in, but that wouldn't be cut. And so I just learned that at the end of the day, like forget whatever business you have. Like if you can't communicate with the consumer at the end of the day, you don't really have a business to begin with.
So how did you eventually move into more of like building kind of an agency around like what your understanding was of what it took to make content and successful content?
It was sort of it again, it was one of those things, like it happens sort of, I don't want to say by accident, but it happens as a result of being aware of your surroundings and being ambitious is kind of the way I would put it. Like so now I'm 18, I've got, maybe 500,000 followers, and I've got all these sneaker deals. I was like the influencer face of StockX, and that was right when that had come out, so that was kind of a popular thing. And so I had all these NFL players who love sneakers, like watching my content, and some would message me on Instagram, and I'm like a diehard NFL guy, so I loved it. So now I'm getting ready to go to school, and I got literally thousands and thousands and thousands of pairs of shoes. I think over 4,000 pairs at my peak, because all the brands would send me everything that would come out, to show it on the channel. And I'm like, I could sell it, but I don't really want to. I want to make friendships off this. So I logged a couple buddies in my Instagram. We DM'd every active NFL and a lot of NBA players and said, send me your address and size. I will just send you shoes. Some thought it was a scam, but a couple hundred responded. And so obviously I sent him shoes. You send someone shoes once. Every time a new shoe comes out, hey, can you get me this? Hey, can you get me this? And I kind of one day was like, well, I can't. Let me just get you a deal with StockX. Let me just get you a deal with Goat, or let me get you a deal with Champs or whatever it is. So I did that for a little bit. And then there was a day that I got a particular player, star player, a deal where we were sitting at dinner and he's showing me how much money he spent on StockX. And he spent like 90 or 100 grand in the last like couple months. I was like, oh man, if they knew what you were spending, they'd give you a big deal. And so I call StockX literally while sitting at the dinner at a yard house, and I tell him who I'm with and what he's doing. He's like, give us a second. Before we finish the dinner, the guy looks at me. He's like, I just got $100,000 put in my StockX account. And I'm like sitting there at 18 years old, like, oh, if I had 10% of this shit, you know? And and so very shortly after that, I called my one of my best, still my best, one of my best friends, Hayes Pollard, who at the time was a linebacker for the Chargers. I said, I got an idea. We should start a business where we get endorsements for athletes, but not the star athletes like him. Everybody else like you, who's a starting middle linebacker in the NFL, and everything. And he loved the idea. Started the business with me. He's a co-founder. Retired from the league and works for the business full time. Still going on 7 years now. Um, and so that's my business partner. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it kind of just happened because everyone wanted it, right? Like it's easy to start a business when the demand is so intense that the second you say, okay, I have supply, it's like boom, there you go.
So how has like the company evolved now? Because like now you've got a bunch of different places you're in, Blake. You've got a tournament you guys host. You also like help with marketing campaigns. You also get, I mean, you get deals for different people. There's a lot of different pieces to what you do. Like, how is that kind of built up and evolved to where it is today?
Yeah, I mean, I think internally, like the way we talk about the business is like Enclave is a holding company that is predicated on successfully using a marketing machine, right? Like, so it can be applied to like the CPT. So Enclave owns the CPT, right? CPT is a series of 8 poker events we do that are televised and everything, where we bring all of our celebrities out, right? If there's a cool brand like a Whatnot that does the live streaming e-commerce, or um, a brand like what you're starting up, like brands that can really go to the moon using creators and or initiatives that can be really helped by successfully reaching the 18 to 30-year-old demographic, which is really, I would say, like our bread and butter. It's the same thing we do with CPT, same thing we do with brands, same thing we do with our event series, what have you. um, it's the kind of thing I think we could be helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, the people that reach 18 to 30-year-olds the best in the world are the kinds of people that have become our closest friends, and because we've done a lot of business together. And so uh y- and then at the end of the day too, right, like they don't even know what opportunities they could have outside of what maybe their management provides them or whatever. And we tend to come in from a very like obtuse place, right? Because Bryce Hall probably gets offered stuff all the time, right? Like it's, hey, do you want no money, but to do something that has the level of experience that you can't find anywhere else, right? Do you want to play in a televised poker event that's going to be the most watched poker event in history, right? Which has been true of our last 6 events straight. We've broken our own records, which have beat all of WSOP or World Poker Tour, any stuff like that. So you come in not only with a value prop, but a value prop that isn't really competitive to whatever else they see. It's very easy to get a yes at that point.
So this demographic, like you have this incredible niche in with this like 18 to 30-year-old demographic. What do you do, Blake, to target them that's just different from other people that successfully gets brands and just people into this demographic in a really good and engaged way?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, from a very surface level perspective, obviously 18 to 30-year-olds are on social media. And everyone says that, and they kind of say that statement, and then they go about doing things that they think would work in their own way. And I'm like, well, wait, hang on, just keep observing, right? Okay, so everyone's on social media. What are they doing on social media? Are they watching videos or looking at photos? More often than not, now it's easy to say they're looking at video, right? Okay, of the video they're looking at, what is it about those videos? Are they shareable? Because the shareable stuff is the stuff that's really going on, right? Okay, if it's shareable, why is it shareable? Because it's relatable, right? And you start working yourself down this kind of rabbit hole of like, what is that initial blanket statement of, yeah, 18 to 30s on social media? Like, what does that actually mean? Okay, so then you have to leave yourself with, so who are they paying attention to? What are they specifically paying attention to? Why are they specifically paying attention to it? And how do you create it, right? The how do you create it, I think, is frankly the part that people pay us for. And I explain to them the other three parts, okay, if that makes sense. Um, and so, it goes without saying, right? I mean, the numbers are there for you. I'm like, right, this stuff's not meant to be a secret. Mr. Beast is a lot bigger than I was on YouTube, let's say, right? And there's big page on Instagram like puberty and wealth and stuff like that that have really high engagement compared to a lot of these other pages that are big blogs that like no one's looking. So yeah, I mean, I think it's frankly more simple than people would think, but a lot of people reject the idea because there's still this like stigma, if you will, around the idea of influencers and influencer marketing. And I don't know, a lot of people talk about how successful micro influencers are. I don't really see it that way unless they're super niche specific. Like if you've got a micro influencer that's talking about stock trading, like, and they got 100,000 followers and high engagement, that means those people like really trade with them, so they're theoretically influential. But there's a lot of these like 20 something year old girls and guys that just like they post about like a bathing suit or whatever. I'm like, they're like, and then the company's like, we paid him $1,000, nothing sold. I'm like, you're better off saving your whole marketing budget. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't mean to ramble, but I think this would be a funny story, and I don't care to share it because I wasn't involved in it. I just know exactly how it happened. Like when I was a YouTuber, I had a SeatGeek deal, as did almost every other YouTuber,
Right.
where they pay you and then they say use your code JustWin, and then people get 10% off or 20% off a ticket or $20 or whatever, right? Well, they gave that same deal in 2017 to David Dobrik. Well, David crushed. And I mean crushed. I mean, literally, I'm not exaggerating, tens of millions of dollars he sold in SeatGeek tickets. So 2018 comes around, and I'm excited because that means I get a new contract, and I get an email. I don't get a new contract. Now I just get commission only. But I had a great relationship with all of my sponsors because I didn't have an agent or manager. I dealt with them myself. So I knew them all personally. So I call the guy at SeatGeek and I'm like, well, I mean, why? I did well. I mean, every report you said I would do well. Or look, our influencer budget's 20 million. We're giving it all to David Dobrik. All of it? All of it. All right. Well, SeatGeek is a publicly traded, very successful business. David Dobrik's obviously really wealthy. People are not necessarily completely sure how. I think he shared the story once or twice in public, but not super public ways. So that's why I'm sharing it. But it's a perfect example of what influence really means, right? Like they gave David 20 million. I guarantee he sold 150 or 200 million in tickets. That's one person, all your eggs in one basket, but it's a perfect basket. So who cares?
Yeah, I mean, you never really hear that kind of approach. Like I usually hear it completely the other way. It's like spread it out, get a bunch of micro influencers, and then have a couple big ones, and have like a trickle down effect to them. You're like just back one person, and that worked with David, and so
Well, and I mean, it depends on the scope of what it is, right? Like I don't. If I was running SeatGeek today, I mean, obviously David Dobrik's in a different boat than he was. Dobrik was beast in 2017 or 2018, right? And like Logan Paul was that number one of number one influencer in 2016, and Jake is sort of that now. Beast is sort of that now. Livy Dunn is sort of that now, right? And I just look at it like the analogy I'd make is like the same one I do for Celebrity Poker Tour, which is that I would rather, and it's a weird thing to think, but I would rather have Caitlin Clark than Michael Jordan right now. Because we run a business predicated on social engagement, Caitlin Clark would get more than Michael Jordan would get. Livy Dunn would get more than Simone Biles, or Mr. Beast would get more than PewDiePie. I mean, right? It's like I just think trading on relevance is so interesting. So much so that I mean, even at one of our poker events, we had the Hawk Tua girl, Haliey Welch, come and play, and she's sitting next to Dwight Howard and Joe Gatto from Practical Jokers and like some real stars. They are like going up to her, like, can we get a picture with you? Like, she was the star of the stars that night. And it just goes to show you, like, people are fascinated by relevance. They're fascinated by the stories they don't maybe know all of, but want to know all of. There's just a level of intrigue, I think, to influencers that a lot of celebrities, in a traditional sense, don't really have. And I think brands miss that.
it's a very interesting point. So, what made you interested in starting like the celebrity poker tour, and what did it take to get that off the ground?
I would just go back to my usual, another by accident. But no, I mean, look, it's. I say it's by accident because the circumstances that create that are ones that you didn't plan for. But the part of it that was an accident is I would say I take pride in knowing that my eyes are always open to what's going on around me. And so as I see these different opportunities, like I'm not missing it. You know what I mean? Because I think it'd be easy to miss. And so really, what happened, uh, as an example, was we were in my house and I was playing poker. And I would always invite our influence over. That was how I sort of maintain relationships. Is I golf with them, I play poker with them, we go on trips, we do whatever it is we do. Like even right now, I got friends in the Bills who I'm seeing while I'm here. So it's what can you do to maintain relationships. So poker is one of those things. And we're playing at the house, and this night, and we play 50 cent, 50 cents. Like everyone buys in for like 50 or $100. So the money's not even the thing, right? Because everyone at the table, it's like Austin Eckler, Alex Botez, the chess streamer, Chum Lee from Pawn Stars, David Tyree, who made the helmet catch for the Giants. Like we had a great group, and we're playing for 50 or $100. And Austin Eckler rivers quads against someone else at the table's full house, right? And everyone's going absolutely nuts. So as soon as everyone calms down, we're sitting down like, holy cow. I mean, mind you, it's probably a $70 pot. Like, it's not big money. Austin's like, do you have cameras in here? I said, no, why? He says, dude, can you imagine if that was filmed, like how viral that would go? And I'm like, mm-hmm. It would go really viral. And this is really interesting. And we see our true colors. The banter is why everyone comes. It's obviously not the money, right? Like, so the next day, I reach out to Poker Go, who produces the WSOP and all these ESPN poker events, and I'm like, "What does it cost to just completely hire you guys to throw one of these kinds of things ourselves?" And 9 months later, CPT's had 8 events, and 6 of the 8 are 1 through 6 on most viewed poker events of all time.
Wow. It's funny, like how you. It's kind of interesting. You mentioned like the money is not really what matters. It's just kind of the banter and the people that are there, and like that's what's really taking this thing to a different place. Like, where do you see celebrity poker tour? Where do you see it just going in general? Because you mentioned you've had a bunch of events. They're successful. The views are there. Is this something that becomes like a really just major, just continues to push into become a major event that like is the poker event?
I think so. I think so. I mean, that's certainly with the goal, right? I mean, look, I think that there's never been anything like this in poker. The people that have tried it very differently. They've tried it with like getting big celebrity names. Like, there's been games like Kevin Hart versus Michael Phelps and stuff, but you're missing a lot of key pieces. You're missing, first of all, the people that will watch this kind of content religiously are 18 to 30. So you need the Nelk boys to capture them. You need certain kinds of people to capture them more than just their favorite athlete will. You need a way to distribute to them, which is a big key. And then you also want the dynamic of like the way I put it is like, Charlie Kirk's going to play one of our events next year, right? And I look at it like there's nowhere else in the world that you're going to go see the Impractical Jokers, sit next to Charlie Kirk, sit next to the Huck to a girl, sit next to Adrian Peterson or Jorge Masvidal or some star athlete. Like there is no location where you can see that demographic, or where you can see that, where rather the demographic can see that kind of exchange, besides the CPT. So it becomes a TV show. It's sort of a sport from the competitive aspect of it. I would also say, right, to a degree, like the NFL is a TV show, right, to a degree. I mean, it's an entertainment business. Obviously, they compete, but everything all week long, building up to the games, the betting, the fan experience. I mean, I look at it like I think we will be the NFL of poker and something that's really fun for people under 30 to watch, kind of like my business partner likes to call it like we're a mega influencer from the standpoint that we've got 65 or 75 of them in a room all at once, 8 times a year. um, but I think that's what it is. I think it's a version 2.0 of podcast concept, TV show, reality show concept, because you get them in their truest form. Truest because we get them drunk. Not, we don't try to, but they just do. We got an open bar and they're nervous because they don't know how to play poker and they're under a lot of lights and cameras. But yeah, I think this will be. I don't. I think calling it the biggest thing in poker isn't even really an objective. I don't even look at what we do fully as poker. I think this will be one of the more engaging shows that the 18 that the under 30 group watches for years to come.
It definitely has a lot of potential. What's like kind of the roadmap right now? Like, where do you see this, like the next series of events going? Like, what are you trying to do to really continue to push this to be even bigger?
I think the canvas of poker is interesting because, like I said, not only does it create that conflict and pit these kind of dynamic personalities against each other, but you have a space where you can put 9 people together and then roll cameras and let them do the rest. So what's interesting in that format, right? Like, forget the poker element of it. Forget if they even know how to play, right? Would it be cool to see former championship teams come back together? Would it be cool to see shows that have been canceled have reunions there? Would it be cool to see uh families fight? Like I look at like a Celebrity Family Feud as like an interesting thing, right? Like when they did the Gronks versus the D'Amelios or something like that, right? Like that's like an interesting thing to watch because of who's fighting who, not because like, well, who's good at Family Feud, right? Like that's not what it's about, right? So um I think it's a lot of that. I think one of the biggest things that we think about, which I think is why we've grown the way we have, is like, how do you create the viewership experience that has legs and is sustainable long term, right? Like the NFL, you care. Many people are on the edge of their seat for every play because they got fantasy players. They care about the 2 yard catch. They got player prop bets. You know, if they're better, and they want the guy to have over or under 19 yards um, or you've got the square game that people play with the scores. Like for one reason or another, the NFL has created a million ways where you as a fan can sit there and watch and be enthused by every play, including the bad plays, right? Baseball hasn't done a great job of it. Basketball hasn't done a great job of it. I understand the same premises are true, but they're not nearly as sticky. So how do you create that sticky premise with us? I mean, one of the things that we did that was low hanging fruit, which we came out with our first CPT event, this was already there with it, was you can bet on our events on an app called Fliff, which is legal in 47 states. The max bet was $50. You could also bet with coins, so you didn't have to use real money, but you could participate in the game. Who's going to make final table? Who's going to win? And all these different bets. And so, I mean, right now, like 20% of our audience like participates in the game because they take their horse. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, I think that right there, right? It's like one of the fundamental things about poker is like, they would say the bigger the stakes, the more viewership you'll get. But I'm like, well, why is that true? Because if I'm watching at home and you're playing for $1 million or $1,000, maybe one time I'm like, oh, let's see what it's like to play for 1 million. But I'm like, that money doesn't matter to anybody besides the 2 players, right? Like when you watch the NFL, you're not like, oh, I love Justin Jefferson because he gets $140 million. Like the money, like no one cares what people that are participating in a competition get paid to be there. So poker is at a disadvantage off the bat because they're basically saying the reason this is cool is because of what you get paid to be there, right? So for me, I'm like, well, that's a completely. I think that's a loser hypothesis. So what is a hypothesis that would work? And so that's why I say like I don't even look at it like what we do is poker. I'm intentionally putting people that don't know how to play at the table. Um, we let certain rules get bent. I mean, the whole thing is up, and and the poker world's like, what the fuck is this? And but I don't know. I just think I think forget the poker world. I think this is what's needed in terms of a place where people can come and be entertained, and it's a stress free form of entertainment. For 4 hours, like a game.
Yeah. No, I think what you've done is great, and it's really like you mentioned earlier, this like new kind of podcast entertainment mashup, where you see a lot of real raw energy and people communicating in kind of ways you just don't see in other places. And the groups are really interesting groups. Like you were talking about the Hawk Tua intervention there, like that's just very different. But Blake, that was all the questions that I had. I appreciate you taking the time and doing this. I think you've built something pretty interesting that's got a lot of potential. And what you've done for brands and for influencers from a marketing standpoint has been huge, especially to their income and also just relevance for these brands as well. So I'm excited to see what you're going to do next. And thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it. It was fun.